Today's recipes highlight a single wonderful ingredient: uni. Those delectable yellow custard-like pieces are in fact the gonads of the sea urchin. I find uni absolutely delicious as a solitary bite. They taste like the very essence of the sea. They're so good. Uni is one of those bites of food that leave you wanting more. But I'm not talking about volume, because you really can't just keep eating uni. I mean, it is financially a mistake and prohibitive, but uni isn't about merely satiating hunger. Uni is one of those things like foie gras or a rich piece of A5 steak. They don't just merely fill you up, they leave you feeling the wonder and sensation of food. I can't help but think of the person who originally thought of dragging one of these sea urchin off the ocean floor, and then they actually had to decide to cut it open, and then they had to pour out all of the inner juices and then scoop out these yellow things, and somehow they figured out that they might be tasty. I'm sure it is some combination of dare or inspiration or courage or just maybe curiosity, but I am so glad they did it. And you might be thinking to yourself, I will never try that. I just do not understand that. And you know what? I mean, I get it. But at the same time, I think there's a challenge there for us. I mean, do you know people that eat at the same few restaurants day in and day out, or week in and week out? Or maybe they even order the same thing at those same restaurants over and over, never changing the order. Maybe that's you. And I understand. I mean, I definitely understand that impulse. Oftentimes, if I'm eating at someplace familiar that has a dish I really enjoy, I am tempted to just order that same thing. The rationale is at least then I won't be disappointed. I'll know what to expect. Is that even the point of going out to eat? To not be disappointed? I mean, that's a pretty low bar. Especially given that meals are a recurring opportunity. I mean, you have other meals to experience in the future. So you don't have to be afraid of taking a chance. And even if it's a restaurant that you frequent, you're going to go back to that restaurant. You can have that dish again. It's almost like you have grace in your meal order. Grace to step outside of what's comfortable in order to introduce the opportunity to experience something better. There's a phrase from the Easter story as told in Matthew that has stuck with me for the past few years. In Matthew 28, the story goes like this. After the Sabbath at dawn on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, and going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. The angel said to the women, and it's important here to note that the women were still in a state so that the angel could speak to them, and yet the manly guards, they were like dead men. They basically fainted. I love that. And the fact that the author of this passage took the time to write these details down in this manner tells you how powerful these women are. I love it, how impressive that is, and I think it's important for us to note. This angel says to these women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen. Just as he said, come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples, he has risen from the dead and is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him. Now I have told you. So the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid, yet filled with joy, and ran to tell his disciples. The phrase that has really sat with me over the past couple of Easters is that phrase, afraid, yet filled with joy. I love that they left with fear and great joy. What a beautiful phrase. I mean, too often we make these ideas, fear and joy, mutually exclusive. And yet here, at the crux of the Easter story, they're held together. We often talk about Jesus in a similar way, as if the point was not to be afraid of following him. As if the point was not to be disappointed by our experiences with the Lord of Lords. And that sometimes makes it sound like we're trying to control this relationship, that we're somehow mastering it. I mean, we talk about like the knowledge of the Bible as if it's something to be attained instead of something to be pursued. I mean, do we talk about other relationships like this? What are we afraid of? Why do we seek to control our relationship with Jesus? It brings to mind this quote by Dorothy Sayers, who was an English author and a contemporary of C.S. Lewis. Like Lewis, she authored many works of fiction, but also penned a series of theological essays. In one, she writes, "The people who hanged Christ never, to do them justice, accused him of being a bore. On the contrary, they thought him too dynamic to be safe. It has been left for later generations to muffle up that shattering personality and surround him with an atmosphere of tedium. We have very efficiently pared the claws of the Lion of Judah, certified him meek and mild, and recommended him as a fitting household pet for pale curates and pious old ladies." It reminds me of this warning in Isaiah. God is speaking and says, "For these are rebellious people, deceitful children, unwilling to listen to the Lord's instructions. They say to the seers, 'See no more visions,' and to the prophets, 'Give us no more visions of what is right. Tell us pleasant things, prophesy illusions. Leave this way, get off this path, and stop confronting us with the Holy One of Israel.' Therefore, this is what the Holy One of Israel says. Because you have rejected this message, relied on oppression, and depended on deceit, this sin will become for you like a high wall, cracked and bulging, that collapses suddenly in an instant." You see, the empty tomb won't confirm our existing structures and beliefs, because that's not what it's about. Especially when those very structures and beliefs have yielded undesirable and often evil fruit. Rather, may we come to see that the empty tomb is a confrontation with the God of the universe and his vision for the way things should be. That the empty tomb is an invitation to a full life, and that life may be filled with fear and great joy.